Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled West Hollywood, parentheses, military intelligence, end parentheses. Alright, and by military intelligence I mean killbox, 24/7 surveillance, entertainment, social engineering, content, platform delivery systems, and murder most foul. Oh yes. This area of Los Angeles that I'm referring to, West Hollywood, was for many years a unincorporated area of Los Angeles, meaning that the Los Angeles Police Department did not respond to homicides in this area during the 1960s. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department investigated homicides in this kill box, which is a military kill box. This is at the foot of Laurel Canyon. It's at the foot of Nichols Canyon. It's at the foot of Runyon Canyon. These are three canyons associated with West Hollywood. All right, I focused in previous videos very heavily on Benedict Canyon, and I've touched on Coldwater Canyon and Franklin Canyon, and a little bit to Oliver Silverstein Stone and O.J. Simpson's canyons called Manderfield Canyon Road, Rockingham Drive area of Brentwood. And then, of course, we have where Will Rogers, the famous political satirist, and Brian Wilson, psychologist, Dr. Lindy, and Charlie Manson and Neil Young spent time in Rustic Canyon, in Pacific Palisades. Yes, in the Will Rogers estate at 14400 Sunset Boulevard on the corner of Rustic Canyon Creek. Yes, and then in close proximity you have the steroid beauty pageant winner, fake Goobinator, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He lives in Pacific Palisades near where Charlie Miles Maddox Manson lived and where Neil Young, the polio survivor from Toronto, Canada, played the guitar and sang songs with Charlie Manson at the swimming pool of the 13-room, 5-bedroom Will Rogers Hunting Lodge estate at 14400 Sunset Boulevard. There's Neil Young. There's Dina Martin, Dean Martin's daughter Dina. There's Susan Atkins, pregnant. Pregnant with a little baby boy. There they are, sitting by the pool. Can't make this stuff up. You should believe nothing that you read in the newspapers. And I mean nothing. Okay? They lie. Liar, liar, pants on fire 24/7. Anyway, getting back to West Hollywood, which is, of course, about 20 miles to the east of the Charlie Manson Will Rogers Hunting Lodge, a.k.a. military intelligence facility, fully controlled and surveilled, with daily deliveries from the Altadena dairy of chocolate milk and eggs on a daily basis. Who's paying, I don't know. I know Charlie doesn't have a bank account nor a job, so I'm assuming military intelligence must be paying for the housekeeping services, the landscaping, the housekeeping, and the cooking. All right, food delivery. So getting back to West Hollywood, let me just tell you that it sits more or less at the base of Laurel Canyon, which is included in West Hollywood, Laurel Canyon. And where do I start, right? So what I wanted to tell you is I think Hollywood is best known for the nightclubs and the delivery of social mixed messaging. Hollywood brought you the Beatniks, which they featured in Hollywood films and presented in Hollywood nightclubs along Sunset Boulevard, Hollywood Boulevard, and Santa Monica Boulevard. Those three boulevards roll through West Hollywood. Santa Monica Boulevard, where the Troubadour is, that's where Gold Star Studio recording studio is. It's where the Phil Spector Wall of Sound that was really created by the Wrecking Crew and ceramic wall coverings. Phil Spector was created by Don Kirshner in the Brill Building in Manhattan, New York. So there is no Phil Spector without Don Kirshner. There is no Carol Klein King without Don Kirshner. There's no Monkees without Don Kirshner. There's no Paul Simon without Don Kirshner. There's no Neil Diamond. There's no Neil Sedaka without Don Kirshner. There's no Archies and Sugar Sugar without Don Kirshner. So the Wall of Sound, really, you could say, belongs to the RCA Brill Building in Manhattan, even though they created it on Santa Monica Boulevard, a couple of blocks from the Troubadour nightclub. Anyway, you should know the names of some of these CIA military control platforms that brought you the hippies. First they brought you the beatniks, then they brought you the hippies through Vito Pelikas. Vito Pelikas was brought out in 1959-1960 to create the Victor Pelikas and his Freaks, which later were rebranded by the media as hippies. And then Timothy Leary galvanized it by the words "tune in, turn on, drop out," which was supposed to be the national anthem for hippies. Then in 1968, Abbie Hoffman was used to morph the hippies into the yippies. Now, a yippie is a politically active hippie. In other words, it's tune in, turn on, drop out, but you vote. We vote, right? We follow orders. We wait for the command, and then we vote in a meaningless election that you have no choices in. It's Coke or Pepsi, aisle or window, smoking or non-smoking, face diaper, no face diaper. That's it. You have no meaningful choices. I can hear the planes above me. Today's another chemtrail day. Every day is a chemtrail day. Every day it's like I'm in the middle of a war. I got helicopters, fixed-wing planes, continuously every 6 minutes flying over my town. I have military jets flying at 25,000 feet above, dumping strontium, lithium, titanium, and aluminum pollution on my head every single day for 6 months in a row. They haven't missed one day. All right, so what I want to give you some names. The Troubadour on Santa Monica Boulevard. Then we had the Starwood Studios, which is best known for Van Halen. And then we have Gazzari's nightclub, Pandora's Box, Rainbow Room, Whiskey A Go-Go, Roxbury Theater, the Viper Room, the Comedy Store, which formerly was known as Ciro's. And then there are at least a dozen other nightclub platforms where Lenny Bruce or Mort Sahl were given a platform. Typically you put comedians with the music du jour, which was jazz, and then it was beatnik music, and then it morphed into rhythm and blues, and then rock and roll with Elvis, and redistribution of rhythm and blues is rock and roll. And then we brought out, fake bands like the Beatles, fake band like Chicago, which is called The Big Thing. Once they signed a contract with Columbia Records, they deleted The Big Thing and morphed it to Chicago. Isn't it ironic that Chicago was only Chicago when they received free housing in Laurel Canyon and signed a contract with Columbia Masonic Evil Eye, CBS, Columbia Broadcasting System? When The Big Thing signed a contract with Columbia, they became Chicago. But when they were in Chicago, they were known as The Big Thing. But when they were in West Hollywood, they were Chicago. And they opened for Janis Joplin, another Columbia Records artist, Janis Joplin. And she performed at the Whiskey A Go-Go, but not before Chicago opened for her. Chicago Transit Authority. All right? Terry Kath didn't run the band. Robert Lamb didn't write the music, okay? Peter Cetera didn't run Chicago. And Terry Kath was murdered in San Fernando Valley, Porn Center, one house from Miranda Street on Fallbrook in Woodland Hills, where Jose Menendez lived near there. Yes, he did. Not too far from where Stephen Twitch Boss, the executive producer and disc jockey for The Ellen Show, Ellen DeGeneres, he was murdered near where Terry Kath was murdered. And one block from where Phil Hartman was murdered and suicided by his wife, Bren, who was probably murdered. I believe Bren was murdered. Phil Hartman was murdered. Stephen Twitch Boss was murdered in Encino off of Ventura Boulevard. And Terry Kath was murdered on Fallbrook Avenue near a Jewish synagogue. Like 2 houses from a Jewish synagogue. And one house from Miranda Street. Miranda is a military intelligence program, if you didn't know. The Miranda Project. Check it out. Go do your research. All you suicide believers out there. Anyway, what I'm telling you is the Troubadour, the Starwood, Gazzarri's, Pandora's Box, Roxbury Theater, Whiskey A Go-Go, Rainbow Room, Viper Room, the Comedy Store, they're effectively controlled by the military. They all are owned through straw people. Let me give you the fake names. Lou Adler, you know, the knucklehead who sits next to Jack Nicholson at the Los Angeles Laker NBA basketball games. The guy sitting to the right of Jack Nicholson, his name is Lou Adler. He's Jewish, and he's attributed to owning about 6 of the platforms known as nightclubs along Sunset Boulevard and Hollywood Boulevard. And he's most notably known for the Roxbury Theater. And I believe his partner is a friend of Paul McCartney, Jane Asher's older brother, Peter Asher. But he's a fake owner, and Lou Adler's a fake owner. Then we have Elmer Valentine. He's associated with the Whiskey A Go-Go, and he has partners also. Of course, none of these people did it by themselves. They have a bank behind them because none of these nightclubs are profitable. These nightclubs are not profitable. They're doing a job to introduce military-controlled messaging through fake musicians. They may be real musicians, but they're not allowed to play their original content. So that's why they're fake. They're cover bands. Every single group that performs at the Troubadour, whether it's Steve Martin and his zany comedian act, which is written by someone else, whether it's Steve Martin or whether it's Linda Ronstadt or whether it's Lenny Bruce, they've all performed at the Troubadour. They're not performing their original material. They're performing military intelligence edited and produced content. Whether it's the Troubadour, the Starwood, Gazzarri's, Pandora's Box, Roxbury Theater, Whiskey A Go-Go, Rainbow Room, Viper Room, Comedy Store, Ciro's. Before Comedy Store, it was Ciro's. It matters not because the Elmer Valentine and Eddie Nash, who's also associated with the 4 murders on Wonderland Avenue, right next door to the Disney Air Force Base, 100,000 square feet underground studios on Wonderland Avenue, which feeds into Lookout Mountain Drive. Eddie Nash was implicated in those 4 murders. And he owns, and Eddie Nash is associated with owning the Starwood Studios, the Starwood nightclub, which featured Van Halen. And 5 other, the Rainbow Room, I believe, also. Anyway, what I'm telling you is we got Doug Weston, Eddie Nash, who's an Israeli Christian Jewish man. Eddie Nash, not his real name. And he lives in Studio City near William Shatner. Anyway, we have Doug Weston, Eddie Nash, Elmer Valentine, Lou Adler, and a whole bunch of other names. But those are the primary names of the owners of virtually 100% of all the nightclubs in West Hollywood are owned by 5 people who are all associated with military intelligence, including Gene Simmons, who's associated with Israeli Mossad. He's Israeli, as is Eddie Nash. Eddie Nash and Gene Simmons came from the same place. I would say that Eddie Nash is further up the food chain than is the fake artist Gene Simmons from the fake band Kiss. Kiss is as real as the Monkees. It's as real as the Archie cartoons. Okay? Meaning it's really fake. They're really fake. Kiss is really fake. Now Van Halen, they're partially fake and they're partially real because they can sing and they can play their instruments, but it's not their music, okay? They're a cover band. Van Halen is a cover band. Chicago is a cover band. Janis Joplin is a cover artist. Jimi Hendrix is a cover artist. You know, Frank Sinatra was. Elvis Presley was. Dean Martin was. Bing Crosby was. Bing Crosby didn't write his music. Bing Crosby's #1 solo singer in commercial pop history. Bing Crosby. And he didn't write his music, okay? So just knock it off with the singer-songwriter lie that's been told. Carol Klein didn't write the songs that appear on her Tapestry album. She may have participated in them. She certainly needed to rehearse them. She can play the piano. She can sing. I'm not denying that. This is the same fallacy argument that people said when I uttered the words that Lance Armstrong's on drugs and that they're all on drugs. And then, there's 10,000 denials about you don't know what you're talking about. You live in your mother's basement. You're a crazy man. Turns out I was correct, right? And when I say they don't write their music, it turns out I'm correct. I'm 100% correct. It's not my fault that you have a childlike mind and you believe in the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny and that Santa's going to bring you some gifts this winter. Okay? That's not on me. That's your fault. That's your mental disability. I'm just telling you the truth. That's how I pop bubbles. I think all the bubbles need to be popped or we're never going to survive this military war that we're under. We're at war, people. Anyway, I want to focus my attention a little bit on Van Halen because, look, I enjoyed all these bands. I played the trumpet, so I love Chicago. I loved the Beach Boys. I've seen them in concert. I love Van Halen. I've seen them in concert. I love Journey. I've seen them in concert. I saw Sammy Van Hagar in concert, okay? I never bought into the Sammy Van Hagar deal. I did buy the CD with Sammy Hagar playing in the sessions with Van Halen, with the Van Halen brothers, Eddie and Alex. And I enjoyed the Sammy Hagar music. I enjoyed I Don't Drive 55. Hey, I don't drive 55 either, okay? And I enjoyed the David Lee Roth Van Halen, all right, who I saw in concert. But that doesn't mean they're real. They're still fake. I mean, they're fake in that they're not in charge of their material. They're not in charge of their schedule. So on March 30th, 2015, David Lee Roth reunites magically with the Van Halen brothers, and they're going to do a national tour across the fake United States of America. And this is going to be kicked off by 2 different television shows, actually 3 different shows, I believe. They were going to do the ABC Jimmy Kimmel show, and they were going to close down Hollywood Boulevard for 2 blocks right by the Dolby Theater, by the Chinese Man Theater on Hollywood Boulevard between North Orange Drive and North Highland Avenue. It's about a 2-block area. This is where Charlie Manson used to live. This is where Janis Joplin was murdered. This is where Ashley Ellerin was murdered, 2 blocks from where Van Halen was performed on a stage that was built on Hollywood Boulevard by the Chinese Man Theater on Monday, March 30th, 2015. Then Van Halen went to appear on the Ellen DeGeneres show the next day at the Warner Brothers lot, where Ellen DeGeneres has her Ellen show set, is on the Warner Brothers lot. She used to have the show on the NBC lot for 5 seasons, but it was moved to Warner Brothers. Van Halen is a Warner Brothers owned band, just like Neil Young is a Warner Brothers product. There is no Neil Young. He doesn't exist. There is a crisis actor called Neil Young who works for Warner Brothers. And there's a band called Van Halen that works for Warner Brothers, and they do what they're told. I sincerely doubt that the Van Halen brothers wanted to reunite with David Lee Roth. But for the purpose of business, it was done. And they kicked it off with a live concert in West Hollywood on Hollywood Boulevard on Monday evening, March 30th, 2015. And then they followed through with the Ellen show and the Jimmy I don't even watch the stupid show, the Jimmy Kimmel show. And they're all owned and controlled by the same military CIA supervisors. My point of today's video is that all of these delivery platforms, the television shows, whether it was American Bandstand in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, or whether it's the Ellen DeGeneres show in Burbank, or the NBC Tonight Show in Burbank, whether it's Warner Brothers, whether it's Columbia Records, whether it's RCA, Victor, it matters not. It doesn't matter if it's EMI or Decca, which are both owned by CBS and RCA anyway. It doesn't make any difference. They all work for military intelligence. They don't write their music. They may contribute to it, but it will be re-edited for applied linguistics. The lyrics that if you listen carefully, you'll realize Robert Lamb did not write dialogue, okay? If you listen carefully, Don McLean did not write American Pie. Bye, bye, American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee and the levee was dry. He didn't write those lyrics, okay? They're New World Order. They're NATO intelligence lyrics, okay? That includes Robert Lamb, Don McLean, okay, and John Lennon, who did not write Imagine. No friggin' way. Go back and read the lyrics. There's no way. That's incompatible with John Lennon. They wouldn't have needed to murder John Lennon if John Lennon believed in the lyrics from Imagine, he'd be alive today. John Lennon did not believe in the lyrics from Imagine, and that's why they murdered him with a military intelligence assassin by the name of, yes, Jose Perdomo, who came from Havana, Cuba, like Jose Menendez did, like Jeffrey Bezos' stepfather did, Miguel Bezos. If it wasn't for Miguel Bezos coming from Santiago, Cuba, which is where Fidel Castro was indoctrinated into Jesuit Catholic school, if it hadn't have been for Miguel Bezos, then Jeffrey Bezos' name would be Jorgensen. It's Jeffrey Jorgensen that went to Princeton University and got a job at Bankers Trust Company and started Amazon. It wasn't Bezos, it was Jorgensen. But he took the name of Bezos, who's a Cuban military operative. Got it? So what I also wanted to disturb you with is that where Van Halen played, right there in front of that Chinese Man Theater, which is one building away from the Will Smith, Chris Rock bitch slap that never happened in real life, but happened at the Academy Awards theatrical performance with fake actors who are fake pretending to take that seriously, is that is a kill box for the military. Let me just give you a few names of the people who were killed in the area where Van Halen performed on March 30th, 2015. Well, Charlie Manson had a home there, free apartment, next door to the Magic Castle, which is one block from where Van Halen performed, on Franklin Avenue. At 7000 Franklin Avenue is the Magic Castle. Across the street on Orchid is where Charlie Miles Maddox was given an apartment when he was a geologist for the CIA. He was a geologist. Charlie Manson was a geologist, even though he never went to school. He's a geologist. Then in the parking lot of the Magic Castle lived Tex Watson, who never went by Tex. His name is Charlie Watson, and he lived with a girl, with his girlfriend, Rosina. Rosina was her name. I forgot her last name. And Bernard Crow, also known as Lotsa Papa, because he had a lot of illegitimate children from different women. Lotsa Papa, he's like 6'6", 300-pound black man who worked for CIA and got free housing in the parking lot of the Magic Castle. It was an apartment building. It's been torn down and they made it a parking lot. On the west side of the Magic Castle was what was known as the Landmark Motel. Today it's called the Highland Gardens Hotel. That's where Janis Joplin was murdered in room 104. You may remember Janis Joplin was the lead band at the Whiskey A Go-Go, and Chicago, aka The Big Thing, was the opening act for Janis Joplin, who was the bigger star than was Chicago. Janis Joplin was murdered on October 4th, 1970. Chicago was being rolled out in late 1968 with their double album. There is virtually no commercial band whose first entry into the entertainment business would be a double long-playing, double LP set. But you'll see that Columbia Records was so confident that the big thing would become a big thing that they rolled out a double LP. So that tells you that when Terry Kath is done away with, at age 30, that it's probably a murder, right? It's probably a murder. And when you look at the zip code there, and you look at Phil Hartman was murdered there, and that Jose Menendez lived there, and he was murdered also, and that's where Lori Loughlin lives nearby, and that's where Peter Grossman and Rebecca Grossman live, and they're in a boatload of trouble, and they murdered 2 little boys in a crosswalk, and Terry Kath gets murdered in their neighborhood, and that's the porn center. That's near Canoga Park. Charlie Manson had a home very close, within 4 miles of Terry Kath's murder. And this is where Mort Saul lived, about 4 miles away from Terry Kath's murder. That you realize that is a militarized kill box, okay? And if you want to believe someone could commit suicide with a 9mm, I mean, you need to go see a psychiatrist, or just drink a case of vodka. That's probably, or Scotch whiskey. Although I'm not sure I'd waste Scotch whiskey on you. Just go with the cheapest paint thinner will do. That's my point for today, people, is that we had Janis Joplin murdered in that neighborhood. Ashley Ellerlin murdered 1.5 blocks from where Van Halen performed. John Belushi murdered a block away. Rebecca Schaefer murdered in that neighborhood. Dominic Dunn, the daughter of Dominique Dunn. Dominique Dunn murdered the daughter of Dominic Dunn from Vanity Fair. She was murdered in that neighborhood. John Zweier, the son-in-law to Art Linkletter, he was murdered in that neighborhood. Amy Harwick, who was the Playboy model slash porn queen, who was murdered in that neighborhood. We have Thomas Albert Decker, a Hollywood film and television star, murdered in that neighborhood. You have Jack Cassidy, married to the Partridge Family's Shirley Jones, murdered in this neighborhood. Lenny Bruce, murdered in this neighborhood. Sal Mineo, murdered in this neighborhood. Diane Linklater, murdered in this neighborhood. Connie Monty, murdered in this neighborhood behind the Comedy Store. Am I getting through to you? So where David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen performed on the stage, they're squarely at the bullseye of a military kill zone. I find that all very disturbing, and so should you. So don't believe anything that you hear or read. You can enjoy the music, but just know that it's synthetic, it's fake. Those artists are not authentic and real. Carole King doesn't exist. Neil Young does not exist. Chicago, the band that I enjoyed, doesn't exist. Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, they don't really exist, okay? I mean, I saw the Doc Severinsen Orchestra. I loved it, but he's not going around promoting, his own original content. He can play other people's music and he can improvise, but he's not producing social engineering messages, right? That's the point. That's the point. If you sign on the line that is dotted, you've signed a deal with the devil, like Sharon Tate did, through no fault of her own. She got duped into it by her military intelligence parents. Doris, who pimped her out on the beauty pageants, and her husband, her father, Paul Tate, colonel in the army, he probably had to do it. Sacrificed his eldest child. Happens all the time. Abigail Folger sacrificed the eldest child. Right? So, Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison. This is a list of 100 people who get whacked, whose parents are in the military intelligence, State Department, CIA business. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Feel free to like and share my videos. Bye now.